Yo, what is up everybody, it's Joe again. Welcome back to another Naruto reaction video here today. And today we got an all new, brand new video by the great Swagkage. And as you can tell by the title, this is Minato versus Shisui. Who would win? So, I think it's safe to say that Swagkage never ceases to come with the very interesting and controversial Naruto hypothetical matchups, right? And this is one of those, right? Because looking at this from a seemingly objective lens, this matchup doesn't seem very contentious, right? Because Minato was one of the most powerful Kages to ever live and one of the fastest shinobi ever in the Naruto verse. He has the feats to show for it, right? As when he was alive in the Third Great Ninja War, and then when he was reanimated in the Fourth Great Ninja War. On the other side, we got Shisui Uchiha, who seemingly doesn't have very many feats at all. I mean, he lost to Danzo, which I think it's safe to say none of us think is on the level of Minato Namikaze. But Swag always comes with some interesting takes. I could see why he would make this kind of video, because both shinobi are heralded as some of the fastest shinobi to ever live. So who knows, maybe Swag will teach us something we don't know, and I'm very intrigued to see it. But before I begin, any less, really appreciate it. Hit that like button, turn on bell notifications to stay updated yours truly. And if you're new and you enjoy, man, and you mess with the kid, make sure to hit that sub button, because once you do, become part of the family forever. But let's not waste any more time, screen. See what Swag has to say today.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Swagkage here, and today, once again, brought my pal Six with me. You can
what up, Six?
Yourself,
shout to Six
again if you want.
Hello. We're gonna go over Minato versus Shisui.
All right.
So, people match them up all the time, right? And I get comments like every day. So who would win, Minato versus Shisui? People tweet it at me all the time, and I see other people getting asked this all the time.
Right.
It's just like a really popular matchup. Let's start with like all the positive stuff for him. Now we can't use the manga.
All right. So before I begin, I also want to point out that from my observations, Swag got some backlash on Twitter about this video, but then again, you cannot satisfy the entire masses ever when it comes to fighting-based anime power scaling. So I don't ever take it as something that I should agree with. I always watch the video first and give my own criticisms and interpretations after. But yeah, that's just always interested to see. But let's continue.
Because he doesn't do anything. He's not there.
He's totally featless in the manga. He basically doesn't exist. He's like a lore entity, if anything, right? Like people talk about
here you go, they're already being pretty accurate, but he doesn't have many feats. That's correct.
Yeah, Shisui's maximum participation in the manga is literally just giving his eye to Itachi. Other than that, like from at least the original manga itself, we get like he ran into Al some time ago during like the Third War, and they fought, like he fought his platoon. Correct. He like scared Al a bit, and I think that's why people ask about Shisui a lot, is because they're looking for information.
And well, the other thing too is there are a lot of different versions of what happened to him. Like they're not all congruent with each other, right? The anime, Storm Revolution, and the novel all tell a different version of the same story. Most of it is pretty similar, but the fight with Danzo is always like different, wildly different. Like if we use anime filler for this matchup, then like Minato is way stronger and Shisui is way weaker.
They are exactly correct about that.
Horrible stomp.
Because in the anime, the confrontation with Danzo just goes like Shisui genjutsu's Danzo because he's like doing some fishy shit. And then Danzo uses Izanagi to get out of the genjutsu. And he like knees Shisui in the chin. And Shisui like flies up in the air and he just rips his eye out. It's a bit better in the game. Yeah, so they like fight each other in the game like back and forth for a while. And they're like kind of tired at the end. And you can maybe even imply like in the game Shisui's holding back on Danzo because he doesn't bring out the MS or the Susanoo during the fight.
Right.
But he still fights him to like fatigue, at least in his Tsurutomo state. So it doesn't really matter. Just like in all of the renditions, the fight with Danzo is the end for him.
Correct.
Like I was saying, the best version of the fight for him is the novel, because Shisui doesn't actually fight Danzo head on there. He gets poisoned, and it's poisoned from one of the members of the Aburame clan. and one of the secondary effects of this poison is paralysis, so he's totally unable to move. That's good for him because that tells us he's not as weak as like pre-Sharingan Danzo, which would just be horrible for him.
Yep.
In that case, Shisui would get obliterated by Minato.
Yeah.
Correct.
Not only would he get obliterated by Minato, he'd get obliterated by people like Itachi, MS Sasuke. He'd get obliterated by later Danzo for sure.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Based on that interpretation, easily.
This interpretation is necessarily inconsistent and use it to construct a sort of picture of what Shisui might have looked like at full power. I think the most impressive thing is there's this plan that the Uchiha clan makes where they want to go kidnap Hiruzen, and the person that they want to have like break into the Hokage Manor, which makes this even more impressive because I imagine that it would be guarded by a bunch of other ninja, and just go into Hiruzen's office and kidnap him and take him hostage. The book specifically mentions they planned on using Shisui's body flicker to do this, which means that the Uchiha clan at least thinks he's fast enough to capture the third Hokage.
Correct.
Even when Danzo gets the Sharingan, you can sort of imply he doesn't think he's at Hiruzen's level. So definitely like pre-Sharingan Danzo should not be at Hiruzen's level, so Shisui shouldn't be losing to someone of that tier.
If you want to go this route, you have to assume then that Shisui is above Danzo, which again, like we said, for the purposes of this video is fine. Danzo actually says this himself, that Itachi and Shisui are just like the best, strongest members of the Uchiha clan.
So the context behind it as well is that they're saying that if they win Shisui and Itachi over, like in this supposedly upcoming war with the Uchiha clan, that they'll just win the war because they'll have the two strongest Uchiha on their side.
It's up to you whether or not you agree with the implication that Fugaku was maybe fit to be Hokage, definitely at least Kage level. Knowing that, it's fair to reason then that maybe it actually does make sense if Shisui is stronger than him, that he would be fast enough to do what they were going to need him to do for this plan, where they were going to have him capture Hiruzen.
And we're just talking about like in terms of a combatant, right? Obviously, because like nothing implies, at least from what we've mentioned, that Shisui should be able to like punch Hiruzen in his stomach and like knock him out or something like that.
Correct, I agree.
But he's definitely got the speed to be up there, and then he's just like an Uchiha with crazy genjutsu. So like overall, he should just be like around that tier, like upper Sani, something like that.
Itachi, throughout both of the novels, he thinks that Shisui is better than him, looks up to him, wants to be as strong as him. This is also implied in the game pretty much right before Shisui dies. The narrative does seem to imply that Shisui is like around like this level of power. It's fairly nebulous, but I feel like understanding this, if I assume that Shisui is actually this strong based on all these things, I have a pretty good idea of who he could and couldn't beat.
And it's not Minato.
Alright, so I did want to pause here and give my 2 cents. So it is definitely safe to say that the power scaling assessment of Shisui is ambiguous due to, again, his lack of feats, right? There's a lot of lore to make some fair implications on how strong he possibly is, right? And it really depends on which interpretation of his battles against Danzo you want to take. If you take the anime interpretation, he is far inferior to Minato and would stand no chance whatsoever, right? Because he couldn't even defeat Danzo pre-Sharingan, who dealt with him pretty handedly. It was a pretty definite conclusion, right? He dominated Shisui, took his eye. Case closed. The best interpretation for Shisui, like Swag said, was the novel, because he was paralyzed by Aburuma clan poison. And from that you can imply that it is possible Danzo did that because he thought that he himself was not a match for Shisui, right? And although that is headcanon and contentious, it is a fair implication to make. Would that make him on the level of Minato? I don't think so, right? I think there has to be more definitive power scaling establishing feats to suggest that he is on Minato Namikaze's level. And there isn't that, to be quite honest with you, right? Also the fact that, again, like Swag and 6 pointed out, he was the chosen one, so to speak, to complete the task of kidnapping the third Hokage, which again you can imply he was the chosen one because of his speed and because of his genjutsu ability, right? With the Kodo Matsukami, if he had to, he would use that against Hiruzen to have him willingly come with him and, you know, execute the plans of the Uchiha with their coup d'etat attempt. So there are some things to power scale him higher than most, right? But despite the several interpretations of Shisui, and there definitely are amongst the Naruto fandom, right? Because there are several interpretations you could have on this character due to ambiguity and due to literally different events that take place from the manga to the anime to the video games, right? Despite all those interpretations and the ambiguity, I think it is safe to say there is no interpretation of Shisui, at least one that is fair, that would suggest he would defeat Minato in the event that they were to battle. There is no interpretation of that. You would have to extremely highball him and wank him to a level that I think is somewhat outlandish, and I'm glad Swag and 6 haven't done that, right? They're trying to give Shisui the benefit of the doubt in some of these assumptions that are being made, these presuppositions, but even then, they're not wanking him to such an extent to suggest that he would be Minato, who has very definitive power scaling establishing feats, right? So if you're really trying to debate for Shisui to win in this hypothetical, you're fighting a losing battle, to be quite honest. But let's continue.
Yeah, exactly.
So the main reason why is, like we just discussed, Shisui's like upper signing, like around that tier, right?
Agreed.
And then we get to Jiraiya, and Jiraiya, when he's talking to Tsunade, this is like during the search for Tsunade arc, is like the first time they find Tsunade. He's telling Tsunade that basically it's like a whole double spread of Jiraiya just jerking off Minato. He's literally like, yeah, Minato's capacity as shinobi is just unmatched. Everybody pales in comparison to Minato, just jerking him off. So it's like Jiraiya, who in base is like around Orochimaru and Hiruzen's level, he's got Sage mode, and on top of that, he still just pales in comparison to Minato. So right there, that's just blatant like ABC. Minato is
you can very easily transitively
like
imply.
I mean, there are a whole lot of other ways that you can illustrate this too, right? Like if you want to assume that Jiraiya is just like biased or whatever, he doesn't actually know what he's talking about. Most people, I think, agree that Sage Naruto was stronger than Sage Jiraiya, and Pain was stronger than Sage Naruto was. When Naruto starts talking to Minato in his mind, when Minato seals the Nine Tails back up, Minato looks at Pain and he's like, so this guy is really strong, but this Madara guy is like way stronger than him, and you're gonna have to like master the Nine Tails if you want to beat that guy.
That's a good reference. That is a good reference.
This guy that Minato's talking about isn't somebody that gave him any trouble, by the way, mind you. Minato, like... what he did to Obito was filthy. It was like a one and done, one tap, and then Obito just ran away. He got hit by one Rasengan and then just gave up.
Yeah.
Like the whole reason Obito went to the village was in order to get the Nine Tails and start controlling it. So you'd imagine that he'd be doing everything in his power to make sure that he doesn't lose the Nine Tails. And like the first thing Minato does after touching him is just like freeze the Nine Tails from his control, right? It's like really bad. So even if Shisui is like at or somewhat above Hiruzen in terms of strength, like there are so many more pegs on this totem pole that are all above him that it's like...
Yeah, it's literally just saying like Minato has a much higher quality of scaling over Hiruzen than Shisui can ever dream of.
Exactly.
Right? And like keep in mind, we're being generous to Shisui here. Like,
yes.
Putting him this high.
Yep.
Just like using only novel things, like assuming the novel is like the canon way to interpret everything. So it's not like, you know, it's not like this is like concrete or anything. Minato is just much higher than Shisui, even at his best, is what's trying to be conveyed.
Yeah, because the thing is, you don't have to make any assumptions to put Minato above all of those people. And with Shisui, you have to be like, well, I guess it would make sense because of these other things.
Right.
But this idea that he's like Hiruzen level is like only supported by all the things that I've mentioned so far. if you kind of agree with the position.
Right. You have to agree with the presuppositions made.
Maybe like Shisui was gonna run into Hiruzen's house while like obviously Hiruzen's off guard, and maybe like genjutsu him, knock him out, and take him out the manner or something like that.
Correct.
There's a tons of ways to interpret that to not mean Shisui scales over Hiruzen. Just like the best way is what we were giving him. That's all.
The best thing that Shisui has going for him in this matchup is Kodo Matsukami. But I think that people really overhype that jutsu because of the whole you can use it without eye contact thing. Like,
yes,
obviously that's really good, right? But I don't think that means that he can just think of anyone he wants on the whole planet and then just activate it, and then they'll do whatever he tells them.
Yeah, like there should obviously be a range, right? Like Shisui doesn't have omnipresent genjutsu or something.
Of course.
Like that.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I don't even feel like it's like, you would have to prove that it's just like a blanket AoE thing for me to believe that, because I feel like it's reasonable to assume he'd have to at least know where the person is.
How do we say
I agree.
Can even like tag Minato before Minato like stab Shisui in the stomach or something? Because Minato already fights extremely bloodlusted, right? Like Minato doesn't play around in his fights. He literally just tries to end them as quick as possible. Like he was literally going to like pile drive a kunai through the top of B's skull. He's gonna do the same thing to Raikage. He slammed the Rasengan in Obito's back, then stabbed him in the kidney. Like he doesn't joke around in fights. And Shisui doesn't open fights with Kodo Matsukami. Like Shisui literally never does something like that. So if we take the game thing, right, like with Danzo, like Shisui fought Danzo the whole time in 3 Tomo, never even thought to bring out Kodo Matsukami. So like, what's he gonna do?
Yeah, if you assume that the fight happens and like both of them are in character, it's really weird to jump to like, oh yeah, he just uses Kodo Matsukami. And I think by the time that he realizes it's a necessity, he would just lose. But even if you assume that it's like a bloodlusted Shisui, I just think that Minato's too fast. So like,
yeah,
a good example
that is a very fair
of this sort of
assumption.
thing
I agree.
is like Sasuke fights B and starts losing and doesn't use Genjutsu on B until he gets a very clear opportunity to. Like he gets a good look at B's eye and then pops it, right?
Like he might send the Kodo Matsukami out, and then by the time it gets there, Minato's not even in that spot anymore.
And I mean, the thing about Kodo is like, I still don't even properly understand how it works, right? Like there are a million
definitely somewhat vague
ways to interpret it. Cause like Shisui apparently used it on all sorts of people in the war and stuff, and like everybody thinks that it's like so scary, but then it also has like a 10-year cooldown. So like, is that like one of his eyes, or is that what happens when you use it?
Yeah, so my interpretation of the Kodo Matsukami is that you could use it at varying intensities, right? So the most intense will result in the 10-year cool-off period, right? Again, this is my assumption. This is not concrete. I believe based off what Danzo did at the 5Kage Summit, there definitely are varying intensities, because if you remember, he also used the Kodo Matsukami to a less intense extent on the 5Kage and the Mediator, right? He was using it to try to manipulate them, to try to influence him into having him become the leader of the allied shinobi forces, right? Because he wanted power, he wanted a leadership position, and he was using that very subtly. And the only reason it was noticed was because of A, right, who was the Mizukage's right-hand man, noticing it with his Byakugan. Right, so I think there are varying intensities of the Kodo Matsukami. However, there's still a lot of things unexplored, right? Like the possibility of possibly Shisui being able to use it mid-battle, right? Because if you can use it that subtly, what if he's using it while you're battling him? Is that a possibility? We don't know. We don't know, because it is very unexplored in that aspect, right? So a lot of things that are mysterious about Shisui. And the best thing we can do is go based off what we know and make the fairest implications possible. Right? The lore, the feats against Danzo, with the best one in my opinion being the one where he's paralyzed, because you can imply, why would Danzo do that if he didn't think he could deal with him, right? But then again, on the flip side of things, you could say, well, it's easier. You don't have to deal with his speed. You don't have to deal with that. And the only reason he did it was for convenience, right? Which is another fair argument. However, I think the one that suggests he did it because he thinks he's a threat is more concrete, right? Because why not just go do it yourself quickly, end it there, right? It's more convenient if the guy is just blatantly inferior to you, right? So like the fight in the anime, he did it himself. He beat Shisui down, ripped his eye out. He didn't need poison. He didn't need any of that. So like again, it's very contentious, and his abilities are definitely unexplored. His speed has never been definitively shown, right? If we're going based off the anime, he's not quick enough to even touch Minato or even see him, right? Because he got beat by Danzo, who no one thinks is faster than Minato, right? Even the best interpretation would suggest he's faster than Minato. It's just something that really can't be said. It really can't be said safely because there's just not enough to prove that, right? And I honestly tend to believe he wasn't on Hiruzen's level. I tend to believe the reason they wanted him to kidnap Hiruzen was because of his genjutsu, honestly. Because the genjutsu gives you the ability to manipulate somebody. I think that's why he was the chosen one, because he had that special genjutsu. And to be quite honest, in the event that Shisui and Minato were to battle, I believe Minato would react before Shisui's synapses even fire. So he wouldn't be able to use the genjutsu anyway. Right, his synapses would not be able to fire in time due to Minato's incredible speed. Honestly, I think that would be most likely the case. But let's continue.
When you're not him.
So in the anime anyway, whenever Mifune, or they find out Mifune is under Kodo Masukame, they literally break him out the way you break anyone out of a genjutsu. They literally they place their hands on him, give him chakra, disrupts the flow, and he breaks him out of Kodo Masukami. In the manga, you may be able to imply Mifune broke himself out because that scene is just not there, but he's clearly not in Kodo Masukami for the rest of his life. So,
all right.
So like, what's really implied is that Shisui is just like the boy who could have been, right? Like he's like this crazy prodigy who just didn't get to live up to everything he wanted to because of like his unfortunate run-in with Danzo, and just due to being so powerful, he was like targeted.
Yeah,
correct.
But it's not implied he's like of the tier we're talking about at this time. Maybe full potential, like perfect Susanoo Shisui would like just slap up Minato, right?
Who knows? We'll never know.
Beat him up badly.
Right.
But the Shisui we got, he's just not up there.
In conclusion, Minato beats him up. Shisui is strong, definitely. Well, if you are generous to him, he's definitely stronger than a lot of people treat him. But he's just not on that like Minato legendary like 4th Hokage level.
I agree.
As always, thanks for watching.
Great video as always. Yeah, Swag and 6.
Take care.
Peace out, guys. Peace. All right, guys. There you guys have it. Very good video as usual. Definitely want to give my take here. So, basically, in conclusion, right? Even with the fairest of presuppositions made for Shisui, it's just not enough to safely imply that he would defeat Minato in the event they were to battle. There's just not enough there. There's not enough there. His run-in with Danzo suggests he's just not at that level, right? Because if he had the speed to match Minato or be above Minato in that sense, he wouldn't even be touched by anybody. Minato was literally a thief in the night in almost every combat scenario. Even against the right Kage, he was. Right? He was just blatantly faster than everybody in the shinobi world during his time as Hokage in his prime. If Shisui was anywhere near that tier, there's no way Danzo would be able to beat him. None of the interpretations would take place. Not the one where he's poisoned, not the one where he gets his ass beat in the anime, and not the one in the video game where they seemingly seem relative with both of them being fatigued by the end of their battle. None of that would happen if Shisui was on that tier. I think that is very safe to say, and that's the best way to kind of negate the possibility of making an argument for Shisui in this hypothetical. It's just very, very outlandish to suggest Shisui would defeat Minato, or even to suggest that he's relative. When you have the speed of Minato, you're on a whole different level. You're on a godly level during this point in Naruto history, right? In the Third Great Ninja War, Minato was literally a god amongst boys. A god. He was slicing throats, seemingly seemingly effortlessly. It was not any problem for him. Even though Kage was blatantly inferior, right? And Shisui couldn't deal with Danzo and a couple of Aburame. Really? Even in the best interpretation, he couldn't react in time, right? That just suggests he's nowhere near the level of Minato. Nowhere near. Even off guard. It is hard to catch Minato. Even off guard it is. Right? When Obito came to the leaf with the Nine Tails and Minato was surprised by him, he still had nothing on him. He saved Naruto's life, right? Pretty casually, and dealt with Obito accordingly. There's just nothing to suggest that Shishui's on his level. The lore puts him at a high tier. I'll give you that. You know, he's probably Sannin level, upper Sannin level if you really want to wank him. Kage level plus, right? But he's not on this level. There's levels to the game in Naruto. There's definitely levels to it. And Minato's just on a different scale. The feats that he has are just too definitive to suggest Shisui would defeat him. His speed is one of the greatest in Shinobi history. So that's all that really can be said. And I understand the appeal of this hypothetical, and I see why Swag did it. Because they're both heralded as some of the fastest. Shisui is very liked amongst the Naruto fandom, very loved, as a matter of fact, very admired. Right? He's a very, very cool character, very cool abilities. His personality, very, very cool. He was one of the most noble of Shinobi, right? Very noble. And just the epitome of what a Shinobi should be like, definitely. Right? Itachi was someone that looked up to him. Shisui was somewhat of a mentor, right? And because of that, we admired the guy, we respect the guy, and we want him to be someone powerful, but he's not on Minato's level. That's just not the case. There isn't enough power scaling, establishing feats to suggest that. And in fact, there are too many anti-feats to suggest that. Right? In all interpretations, if he was on the level of Minato, he would not have it. He would not even be touched by Danzo and his squad of goons, whoever it is, Aburame clan, or the Foundation, whatever. He would not be touched. He would slice all their throats, casually. That's what Minato would have done. If you switch the individuals in this battle, imagine putting Minato in the video game, in the anime, or the manga. What would happen? Danzo would be destroyed. He would have gotten clapped, casually. He would not even touch the man at all. If they try to poison him, his ass would be out. He would be out of the battlefield before the poison even reaches him. He'd be gone, out of there. It'd be really hard to catch him. Almost impossible, quite honest, due to the speed. So yeah, guys, that's my interpretation of this. It was a very good video, and I don't see the backlash. I really don't. That I've seen on Twitter. There's always people that are going to criticize. I think it's somewhat unfair because Swag and Six were very fair, and they give the right conclusion. Minato would win. That's the important part, right? There's always people that try to find something to nitpick about, unfortunately. But it's fun to try and think about these battles, these fun matchups, and Swag is really good at that. So is Six. So shout out to them. I don't see the reason for backlash, but again, there's always going to be people that criticize and find something to be negative about. It's just the way it is in the community. However, I thought it was a very good video. Very fair takes were made in the video. And yeah, guys, I think it's going to wrap it up. Let me know of your interpretation and take on this. Maybe you have a different one. Maybe you have a different perspective. I always like to see what you guys have to say in the comments, so please let me know. Let me know of any recommendations you may have in the comments as well. And I'll catch you in the next video. It's Jelly Ray signing out. Peace.